Everybody. I'm glad you're joining me for this presentation. Hope you're staying safe and staying at home. The presentation was going to be 1 billion people, 1 billion pounds of food grown by each. Is it possible to convince 1 billion people to grow 1 pound of food who may not normally do so? Well, the reality was no. This isn't even close to a viable solution or model. So, what was I going to do? Go to the mattresses. You may have heard that in a movie. I went back to my resources and I also went to the World Bank. Thank you, Jesse, for that information. To begin looking at this in a different way. What is that way? To feed 7 billion people by the year 2050. That gives us just under 30 years to do this. So I want to present to you some interesting information about farming, soil nutrients, food choice, and what to start with as the right food crop. This slide may give you a little clue. Did you guess potatoes? Bingo. Can we improve potatoes? Let's start with what is the most nutrient valuable potato? If you look in the picture, right in the middle, you see a potato that's cut in half and it's blue on the inside, or purple or red on the outside. More color, more nutrient. So, can we improve on an already nutrient-dense potato? Where do we start? First off, we want to know how much people eat in a day. As it turns out, it's 2.8 pounds plus based on a UK study. Interesting, in the same study, men between the age of 20 and 39 used alcohol for about 9% of their energy per day. That may be an interesting lecture all by itself. Let's look at potato production in the United States. There's this group called the Major States. It's the top 10 producers in the US, and as a group, they account for what amounts to 42 billion pounds of potato produced. Now, that doesn't include two big states, Montana and New York. Their combined is about 770 million pounds. So if you added that, that'd be 49 plus million pounds of potatoes produced. But for this example, this slide set, we're going to be using that 42 plus billion pounds as an example of where we can go. So if the average person eats 2.8 pounds and we ask, please, as 30% of your daily diet use potatoes, that 42 billion pounds of potato that's produced could actually feed 137.8 million people daily for 1 year. Here's the interesting thing. The global production in 2016 was 661 plus billion pounds of potatoes. That, on a 30% daily intake, could feed 2.157 billion people. Let's not stop there. Can we improve that potato? It starts here in the soil. And soil is made up of minerals, water, organic matter, and air. Air is 78% nitrogen, and that is one of the primary needs to grow healthy plants. But how do the rest of the nutrients get there? They get there by microbial life, which accounts for 92% of the total weight of organisms in soil. Someone said many years ago, It takes 100 years to build 1 inch of soil. Can we improve on that? Let's start by understanding what we really need in soil. A teaspoon of productive soil generally contains between 100 million and 1 billion bacteria. Those are responsible for producing 18 essential elements or nutrients every plant and animal needs. Isn't that interesting? A lot of everything I've just described sits in this thing called organic matter or soil organic matter, and that is the top layer of soil, rich in nutrients and micronutrients, and it contains approximately 50% carbon. Remember that thing about greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide buildup, and things like that? Well, think of this as sequestration. The better soil organic matter we have, the greater held is the carbon. Unfortunately, globally, synthetic fertilizers, in other words, inorganic fertilizers, are being used. They are based on salts. Salts bind the nutrients that are delivered via inorganic fertilizers into the soil. When the soil, or actually the moisture in the soil finds that fertilizer, the salts begin to break down, but not to the point where they get washed out of the soil. So over time, soil has salt builds up from the fertilizers or whatever that go into that ground. And every year the US loses 29 million tons of SOM, which means the naturally produced nitrogen and micronutrients and microbes are lost. Dr. Drucker says that truly healthy plants require up to 70 micronutrients. If we have great soil, the majority of those micronutrients are actually naturally produced. Unfortunately, right now we are losing 12 million hectares a year in soil that could be growing crops. That's a lot of soil. What does that mean in acres? Well, first off, let's talk about soil itself. How can we improve soil? We can improve soil by building our own compost. And the compost I'm talking about is a combination of grass clippings, leaves, and food scraps. Now, if you look in the left of that screen, and then you look in the lower left, you'll realize how to combine them in a proper way to get the proper mix of moisture and nutrients. And then you turn it and you keep wetting it. And yes, I put urine in there because urine/urea is a form of nitrogen. It is a nutrient and it is moisture. So by using that, you're increasing the nitrogen content. Can you go even further? Absolutely. Put in aged poultry or horse manure or blood meal or 1300 organic fertilizer. All of these things will speed the process for producing compost in as little as 6 weeks. That's where you and I can start. So here's a gentleman named Cam Tabb out of Kearneyville, West Virginia. He adds 10 to 12 tons of compost that he produces each year per acre of land. So let's say an average of 22,000 pounds. He claims 80 more bushels of corn per acre than his neighbors who are using inorganic fertilizers. Plus, he has a greater extent of biologics. He has more nutrient availability, more water and air in his soil. He has greater drought and pest resistance and higher water retention. All of those things add up to quality soil. Now, what does that mean for you and I? I showed you the compost making slide. If you take the 22,000 pounds that CAM-TAB is using and you divide it by 43,500 square feet, that's the square footage in an acre, you actually only need a half a pound of compost per square foot to affect soil in a very positive way. Let's go nationally now. This is the municipal solid waste generated by material in 2015. In other words, 262.43 million tons in this beautiful, pretty pie chart. The way it's broken down right now, it doesn't give you much of an idea of what we could do to turn this into compost. Let's look at it a different way. If you think about what is salvageable for composting or recycling, now you have a much better sense of where we are. So when you add the wood, the food, the yard, and the paper scraps, you combine those, and now we have the opportunity to create 150.5 million tons or 301 billion pounds per year of compost just from the municipal solid waste we collect every year. Now let's go back to hectares. That 12 million hectares lost is equal to 29.6 million acres globally. Here's the crazy thing. The US farmer, on average, can grow 29,000 pounds of potatoes per acre. So that 12 million hectares lost, if we could regain that and put it into crop production, look at the number. You could grow 860 billion pounds of potatoes. So just that one restored loss per year could feed an additional 3.812 billion people. So if you add the global production model I gave you previously, which was the 2.157 billion, and you add the 3.812 possible billion, we're now at 5.969 billion people on a 30% of their diet potato consumption. However, here's another interesting piece of information. Every acre of U.S. farmland produces an average of 4 tons of material, it's called green manure, that becomes compost naturally. But lately, it's being pulled off of the fields and turned into cattle feed. And what I'm saying is leave it on the fields. If it's left there, now that 22,000 pounds that CAM-TAB puts into his soil could actually be 14,000 pounds, not 22,000 pounds. That means 0.322 pounds per square foot added instead of half a pound. So now all of a sudden, we could cover 934 billion square feet or 21.4 million acres of food crop land in the United States with just the municipal solid waste material that is collected out of the 349 million acres planted in crops. The good news is we're only one of 126 nations capable of industrial composting. What's the net result? The net result is we are less reliant on inorganic fertilizers, which means more SOM, soil organic material, is left alone. It does not burn out. That's definitely something to consider. So if we maintain or restore SOM in land used for food crops, we increase the nutrient abundance in soil, we decrease reliance on inorganic products and low nutrient value, and now we focus on nutrient-dense potatoes versus quantity production. It's not difficult to increase the nutrient density by as little as 20%. That's a very conservative number. Some numbers are as high as 80% increase. What does that mean for you and I? If nutrient density is increased 20% alone in a potato, that means we need to consume 20% less in volume to get the same nutrient value. In other words, we could feasibly feed 1.2 billion people. Now, if that's the case, then what I'm saying is that literally within 3 or 4 years, we could turn this model around and we could be feeding at 30% diet using potatoes 7.46 billion human beings. It sounds so easy, doesn't it? I'm going to leave you with 2 brainy quotes, both from Aldo Leopold. We abuse land because we regard it as a commodity belonging to us. When we see land as a community to which we belong, we may begin to use it with love and respect. A thing is right when it tends to preserve the integrity, stability, and beauty of the biotic community. It is wrong when it tends otherwise. Hey, thanks for listening. And we've gotten together as a Tuesday night group. If you have any questions, comments, whatever, email me. You've got my information. Thanks for listening. Take care.